Now, about a month ago, we saw the launch of the game Star Wars Outlaws from Ubisoft, and in a video shortly before the game came out, I said I likely wasn't going to buy and play it, that I just had a bad feeling about it. I just didn't see anything about the game itself, the gameplay, the features, and so on, that really made me want to get the game and play it, to spend hours upon hours of my life on it, when it looked like a sort of reskin, a Star Wars reskin, of a game I had seen or played many, many times before. Basically, it just didn't look like anything special, nothing that would interest me, other than, of course, being Star Wars. And though I know some out there have bought and enjoyed the game, which is great, glad you're happy with it, but I did indeed stick to my guns and not buy it, which is a decision I haven't been regretting after reading and watching some less than flattering reviews, as well as seeing videos about or showing the buggy gameplay, not to mention just how bad the combat tends to look, where apparently Kay Vess, the character you play, has gone to Talia's school of punching out stormtroopers with one relatively weak-looking punch. Anyway, what's, I guess you could say, kind of curious about me not buying this game is, well, for one, I follow and try to report on all things Star Wars for a living, both on this channel and on my other one, where I tend to cover more of the day-to-day news regarding Star Wars. And here was a major video game release that I wasn't going to really cover. And the funny part is that in all reality, I probably could have bought the game, played it a little, and done a review of it that likely would have netted me enough YouTube ad revenue to pay for the game, and I still didn't feel like playing it. Another thing that's, again, curious, I guess you could say, is that once upon a time, and for most of my working adult life, which means when I've had disposable income basically, I've just automatically bought Star Wars games when they come out without really thinking twice. Along with buying a lot of other Star Wars stuff without thinking twice, a lot of which I really wish I had thought twice about buying. I have bought a lot of Star Wars stuff in my life, a lot of games. But anyway, this one, Outlaws, was more or less the first time I passed on a Star Wars game, simply because I just wasn't sure I really wanted to play it. And not because I was short on money or maybe short on time to actually be able to play it, which, yeah, has happened to a few Star Wars games in the past. It's also worth noting, I think, that as of late, or in recent years, pretty much since Disney purchased Lucasfilm and, of course, took over Star Wars and initially handed exclusive rights to make games over to EA, but new Star Wars games are pretty few and far between these days, especially compared to the days gone by in the pre-Disney era, when we'd often get multiple games coming out every year. Now, on average, we get, maybe a game every other year? And yet, even though I have no clue when the next Star Wars game will come out, and it'll probably be the third game in the Jedi series in a couple of years, which I will absolutely play because I've enjoyed the first two games in that series, unless Eclipse somehow comes out, the game I think a lot of people forgot was mentioned a few years ago, or that KOTOR remake finally happened, something else I think a lot of people have kind of forgotten about. And I'm certainly not going to hold my breath that that game will ever come out. Either way, after seeing the sales numbers that recently came out for Outlaws, where it has only sold 1 million copies, which, no, isn't a terrible number or anything on average, but it certainly isn't a great number for a Star Wars game. And Ubisoft has even said that the sales have been much softer than expected. They are disappointed in them. But anyway, after seeing the numbers that it isn't selling well, relatively speaking, I clearly wasn't the only, what you might call, hardcore Star Wars fan who passed on this game. I'm certainly not the only Star Wars fan who once looked at a new Star Wars game and just considered it an automatic buy, who looked at most new Star Wars things, whatever they might be, and considered them an automatic buy. And what's a little ironic about this is that, as I've discussed before, the reason why Disney purchased Lucasfilm in the first place, the reason why they wanted Star Wars so badly, was because of people just like me, was because of the Star Wars fans who consume virtually everything and anything, again, pretty much automatically or without question, because they just can't get enough of it, or because they want to know and experience everything Star Wars has to offer. And I mean, that is really why the property has value, not because of the stories themselves or all the lore or that sort of thing, but because of the fans, because of the customers and their willingness, their eagerness to spend their hard-earned money on Star Wars. Oftentimes, again, without really a second thought. They, yes, and the general appeal Star Wars does certainly have, are what Disney spent $4 billion to attain because they thought they would make that money back and make it back tenfold over time, in large part because of those fans who love Star Wars so much that they buy without question or thought. And though, yes, there are still plenty of them out there, there are still plenty of Star Wars fans who love, or say they love, everything Disney has ever done with the franchise and will do, who pretty much automatically eat all the new stuff up and say, "More please," with a big grin on their face, and praise it to the point of something you might even call toxic positivity at times. But even though there are still plenty of devoted fans out there who don't question Disney and they just open their wallets, I'd argue there are many who have completely checked out, who used to live for new Star Wars, anything new Star Wars, but now want virtually no part of it. Other than maybe the old stuff, of course, the pre-Disney stuff that maybe they fell in love with in the first place. And yes, obviously this has been going on for a while now. I didn't just have this revelation or anything because I now decided to pass on a game. But I think these days, you're really starting to see the effects of Disney's complete mismanagement of Star Wars. You're seeing it in things like, the lower than expected sales of a game like Star Wars Outlaws. It's kind of crazy to think that Star Wars finally has this big, beautiful looking open world game where you can explore multiple planets and get involved with the criminal underworld, something many fans have been asking for a long time, and yet the sales just aren't there. Many of the fans who once would have given anything for a game like this just can't be bothered to care and buy it. Though, in all fairness, it being in the hands of Ubisoft doesn't help either. That is, I say with a great deal of certainty here, that is certainly a part of the reason for the softer than expected sales. But Outlaws is not even close to the only place this is manifesting. There's things like the low ratings for The Acolyte, where it started, according to Disney anyway, pretty strong in terms of viewership, but by the end, almost no one was watching anymore. It ended up having the lowest rated finale of any of the live-action Disney Star Wars Plus shows, and by a pretty wide margin. And though part of that was the fact that, no, it wasn't a very good show, I would argue, but another big part is, again, they have lost so many of those fans who used to automatically watch anything and everything Star Wars. They have lost the faith of so many. Even things like the Star Cruiser closing after roughly only a year shows how Star Wars has fallen, where Disney was apparently confident enough in the brand, in the Star Wars brand, to make a resort costing them over $1 billion reportedly, that would charge anywhere from $5,000 to $6,000 or more for just 2 nights and for the ultimate Star Wars experience. And I mean, did they really think the average Star Wars fan was going to be willing to go into debt for those 2 days, or just what was the plan? And sure, maybe once upon a time, or if Disney had handled things differently, some fans would have given anything to go. They would have gone into debt or whatever they needed to do. And there likely would have been plenty of them willing to do whatever it took to pay that outrageous price and keep the Star Cruiser afloat for years to come. But that wasn't going to happen given the current state of Star Wars. Again, I know I'm not saying anything that most of you don't already know, or that I haven't talked about in some way, shape, or form in my previous videos, but I guess, not to sound self-centered or anything quite like that, but I guess with it sort of happening to me, where I just didn't want to play the newest Star Wars game, mainly because I just didn't want to play it, where I also have a stack of new Star Wars books and comics sitting there backing up, and I just don't feel like reading them, when I used to read pretty much everything immediately and in a matter of days at most, where I told myself not long ago that I was going to catch up with all that back stuff, but decided to reread Darth Plagueis instead. And then when I was done with that, I said I was really going to catch up with the new stuff, but instead I grabbed Outbound Flight off the shelf and started to reread that. And all of this has really left me wondering just how many Star Wars fans have checked out, or just don't care about it the same way they once did, who perhaps stopped being that automatic customer and maybe only buy a few things here and there, watch a few things here and there, or maybe nothing at all anymore. Maybe they just stick to the old stuff, because for me anyway, What Disney does or will do, that doesn't change my love for Star Wars overall, for what has come before. Nothing can ever change that. In fact, reading the aforementioned Plagueis novel, which is one of my favorites from the EU, it's kind of responsible for bringing this video on. It kind of reminded me how much I do love Star Wars, how devoted to it I once was and still in a way am, again, overall. And look, I'm not saying Disney hasn't done anything good with Star Wars. There is some good stuff, some great stuff even, mixed in with a whole lot of average and a whole lot of bad and forgettable too. Problem is, the occasional good or great thing really isn't enough to balance with the whole lot of bad. It's not like most of what they do is good and you only occasionally get a dud. If that were the case, yeah, we still would be upset about the duds, but I do think we as fans would be more understanding, and I do think a lot of fans would still be here. But most of what they do feels like Star Wars for the sake of Star Wars, or Star Wars for the sake of exploiting the automatic customer, and I think a lot of automatic customers have woken up. I think they realize that once upon a time, yeah, Star Wars was putting out quality, and you really didn't think about buying it. You didn't think about how much it was costing because you were enjoying it. But now you're enjoying it less and less, and of course you start to ask yourself, why am I spending money? Why am I spending time? And again, I'm not saying I'm just realizing all of this right now, that there's a mass exodus from Star Wars. It's been going on for a while, and we've talked about it before. Nor am I saying that I think Star Wars is all but dead. I think there are still plenty of fans sticking around, even some that are genuinely happy with the Disney era and will be happy to keep paying for it. But I really, really do wonder just how many are gone. I can't help but wonder when I myself, who I know how devoted to Star Wars I've always been, and again, I'm not trying to sound self-centered or anything, but I know how much I love Star Wars. I know how much of my life and money and time and everything I have devoted to the franchise, and so when I start to pass on it because I don't care anymore, I wonder how many who were once like me are just in that exact same boat. And I'm not trying to make this some sort of competition or saying I'm a hardcore fan and I'm better or worse or whatever. I'm just saying I know how much I care and I know how much other people care, and I'm curious how many of those people are gone. I really wonder just how many of those fans that Disney paid $4 billion for, and again, they were really paying for those devoted fans and the general appeal of Star Wars, yes. But I can't help but wonder how many have left the fandom for good or have seen their interest level go down to at least some degree, if not all the way down. Just what did Disney do to Star Wars? Well, that's all I got for you this time. Now it is your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think. Tell me, are you or did you used to be an automatic customer, if you will? And if it is in the past tense, if you're done with that, what broke you? What was the point when you said, or what made you realize I just don't care that much anymore? Whatever the case may be, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.